So let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Good evening to all of you, and thank you for joining us tonight. It's going to be a unique session, a very artistic one. So thank you for joining us. Our topic for today is music in the ESL classroom. Our presenter, Rachel Forney, has joined us tonight from Ottawa. Thank you, Rachel, and welcome.
Thank you.
My co-host for tonight is Gonul. And then I'll be moderating the session. So let's start with our land acknowledgement. As you learn with us tonight during this dialogue session, we encourage you to reflect on the land we are on. While we are spread far and wide, the TESL Ontario office is located on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee. Technology-wise, this session will be recorded, as all of you now know and have accepted. There is audio and video located at the bottom of your screen. As you can see here, you can select a button to turn your audio on.
Please stop that. Sorry.
As well as to turn your video on and off. You have the option to turn your cameras on, as you can see where it says stop video. We advise you to only unmute yourself when answering a question. There's also the possibility to chat, and the chat button is located at the bottom of your screen. You can chat with attendees, as well as ask our subject matter expert a question. You can select everyone to chat publicly, or you can select a participant's name to chat privately. There's also a raise hand button, and you can use it to respond to a question out loud, or you can use it when we call on you, and then you're free to unmute your microphone and share with us your experience or answer a question. In addition to raising a hand, you're also free to select reactions, any of the reactions you feel like sharing. And of course, you can go to reactions and click raise hand when you want to raise your hand. We sometimes use polls, not in this session, but they usually will appear on your screen automatically, and then you select the response to submit, but we're not using polls tonight. So in addition, we will be using live transcript. Closed captioning options are available, and you can select live transcript using the button below. Select show subtitle to see closed captioning, or select hide subtitle to hide closed captioning. At the end, we will go through some very short courtesy and respect rules. So please unmute yourself when asked by the moderator. Please avoid interrupting or speaking over someone, because we can't hear any of you then. Also, try to keep your comments to no more than a minute. Disrespectful or insensitive comments will not be tolerated, and then the moderator may choose to remove someone if necessary, though we've never done this so far. So thank you, everyone. I'll hand it over now to Gonul, and she will start with our questions for tonight. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Loretta. Let me share my screen. Second, please. Welcome, everyone, and good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. Such a wonderful evening out there, and we really appreciate that you spending your time with us. This means a lot to everybody who's here. And our topic today is music in the ESL classroom. And as Loretta mentioned earlier, our presenter is Rachel Forney. And I'm going to give some information about Rachel. Rachel has accumulated a combined total of 20 years teaching ESL FSL, and music, a certified language assessor. She has taught in both the LING and the ESL programs and served as the lead choir director, music teacher, composer, and arranger. Rachel is also a certified PD partner. She holds a B.Ed from University of Ottawa and a BA from Andrews University, as well as Sir TESL from University of Saskatchewan, and a TEFL certificate from I2I in the United Kingdom. So before we start, I would like to give you some general information about our dialogue session, just in case if you're joining us for the first time. So we'll start, tonight specifically, we have 3 introductory questions. I'll read out loud on behalf of Rachel, and then I will ask Rachel to answer that specific question. And then once she is done, then the floor will open to our audiences. If you feel comfortable, you can unmute yourself and participate that well. Or you can write it right into chat. That way, Loretta can read out loud for all of us. And however you feel comfortable, it's just pretty relaxed environment in here and safe. So whatever your heart tells you to do that way. And second, we have a total of 5 conversation questions. We will do exactly the same way. I'll read out the questions. Rachel will answer, and the floor will open the audience again. And then finally, we have a breakout room activity, which is the most fun activity that many of our participants really enjoys. So we try to have about 20-25 minutes in total for that specific activity. Basically, Rachel prepared a specific activity question for everyone. So, and Loretta will
TESL webinar.
Divide some breakout rooms, and just make sure in the breakout room you have someone as a speaker or a reporter, and make sure to remember which group that you are in. So when you come back from your breakout room, we'll give you a chance to participate and tell us what happened in that breakout room. So without further ado, let's start. So the first question, what is the first thing that comes to mind when we think about music? So as I mentioned earlier, we'll start with Rachel. Over to you, Rachel.
Well, usually when we think about music, we think about choir, or we think about band, or perhaps some type of musical ensemble. Sometimes we think about, in the classroom specifically, we think more about music as like a textbook or a source of learning material for our classes. But there are many ways that we can use music, and there are many things that come to mind with music. I know for me, music is fun. I'm often singing and humming, and sometimes this might be somewhat embarrassing, but one of the schools I was at, I didn't realize that, but when I was in the bathroom, I always hum. And the secretary said, I always know when you're in the bathroom because I hear music. So music is an integral part of our lives. And I know it's especially an integral part of my own.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing that insight and personal experience with us. That was wonderful. I'm pretty sure everybody laughed about that, which is great. And now, floor is open to everyone who would like to participate. Please feel free to turn on your camera, unmute yourself, however you feel comfortable, or use the chat and we'll read out loud whatever the message you may have for us.
Right, so we had some answers from Carolina. Music is a relaxed environment, and it is, right? It is for sure. Thank you, Carolina. And then Nancy goes on and says, mood and rhythm. It puts you into a certain mood. Exactly, right, Nancy? Happy, Manal. Whenever there's music, there's happiness for sure. Music is happiness. And yes, Paul Yang agrees. Nancy, music is comfort and solace. It definitely is. It is so comforting to listen to music and to be in an artistic environment. Kim is saying that music is fun, and Vincent is stating that music is truly a universal language. And that's absolutely true. That's so beautiful. It really is a universal language. Whenever there's music, there is communication, right? Meditative. Rita is saying, many people are using music in meditation, and it is widely used. It's a nice cliche. Okay, that's true. Nice.
Anybody else would like
And feel free to use your microphone as well and share with us your thoughts. When you hear music, what comes to mind? To me, for example, music means peace. Like I can enjoy music when I'm at peace with myself and my environment. It's timeless. Melita, yes, absolutely. It's timeless indeed. Jennifer, have you ever encountered any cultural issues with the use of music in the classroom? Like inadvertently offending some learners with the choice of music? That's such a deep question. And Jennifer, thank you for bringing that forward. Rachel, do you have an answer for that question?
To be honest, I haven't ever offended anybody. At least none of my students have ever said anything. In my classroom, when I use music, I use it more recently, that is in the last 10 years or so, than before. Because of the teaching environment, I had a lot more flexibility about my classroom, about what I can do. In another school, it was a little bit more restricted. And so you were expected to do certain types of things and run your classroom a certain way. And there wasn't a lot of flexibility as to the way you did it. But we have had students who have not agreed or been offended or disliked intensely the music that somebody else was listening to in the classroom. But generally, I haven't had a situation where I've had a student who was offended by the music that was presented or shared. However, if it did happen, that would be an opportunity for conversation for both sides, the person who feels offended to explain why the music is offensive. Is it a personal choice, or is there some deeper, experience or something that is the reason for the way they feel? And then to make everybody else aware about, that feeling, so that we can be careful not to offend or, make somebody feel uncomfortable.
Absolutely. So there's something we need to be aware of and be careful, especially once we know the students we are working with, right? You know the environment, you know where they're coming from, their culture. We have to be careful in our choice. So thank you for bringing that up, Jennifer. A great point indeed. Raid says joy. Yanika, sorry if I'm mispronouncing any of your names. Absolutely sorry. Rick, dance music keeps me alert. You have to be awake, right, in order to enjoy it. Patricia, full of emotions, matching different moods. That's true. Even changing your mood sometimes. Paul, a way to express feeling and thought. Beautiful comments. Is it the music or the lyrics that we should focus on? That's a question from Rick. Yes.
Is that for me?
Actually, I could answer my own question.
Okay.
It was me. I think it should be the lyrics.
I think that would depend on your purpose in using the music in the first place. If the music is simply, to enhance what you're doing, you're an activity. For example, if you were working with students on a creative activity, for example, they're writing a story or something like that, then I would put different types of music in the background than I would if I was doing something where I wanted them to be a bit more focused and concentrated, I would have a different type of music, but also make it softer. And I would usually not use something with lyrics, simply instrumental. Because when you hear the words, you get distracted by the words. And then it, especially if you're writing or doing something where you need to use words, then it becomes make a bit of a challenge to focus on, you know, what you're doing and so on. Sometimes it can be an enhancer, but it depends on the context. So I would say it depends on what exactly you're doing to determine whether you need to use music that is instrumental or music with lyrics.
Right.
Or both.
And Suggestopedia is a teaching method that recommends using music in the background when you're teaching, because it's helpful for some students. But as Alia is saying, for some students, it's not helpful because music puts them to sleep. So we have to take that into account as well. Nancy is saying lyrics and composers are found. The poetry of music is also important for discussion, for themes, and we can definitely use them in a language class. Right. So as Gunul was saying, we can use classical music in the background while doing an activity for inspiration. Rick is stating that Rick uses lyrics to teach grammar. I've done that in many occasions, and it's fun because students really enjoy going through the lyrics. Yeah. Very good. Great. Thank you for all your comments and feedback. This is amazing. Okay. So great. We can move on. Joshua is saying music gives a rhythmic mnemonic device for language learners. And we have to address and we have to accommodate all our different language learners. It can help with pronunciation too. Absolutely. There are so many students, international students, that have learned English and correct pronunciation through songs. Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Let's move on to our second question, Gunul.
Perfect. Great. Thank you for participating, everybody. That was awesome. So question 2 for introductory. How is music currently used in the classroom? So again, over to you, Rachel.
We sort of already touched on this in some of the comments, but and some of you have already shared how you use music in your own classrooms. But we often use music as source material or a textbook. There are some that share that they use music or the lyrics in music for grammar activities, or perhaps you use music as a thematic source. For example, you might listen to the words or listen to the song, you know, maybe it's cold outside, and then use it as a jumping off point to talk about sexual harassment, what constitutes sexual harassment, and so on and so forth. I'm sure some of you have heard that song is, some places have banned it because it depicts basically sexual harassment. And so some people some radio stations won't play it at all right now, whether it's a more recent version or the older version. I think it was with Frank Sinatra who was singing it. Sometimes we use music as like we have a special event at school, and we might put together a group. Sometimes we use it to explore cultures. Perhaps we want to listen to Indigenous music when in October, when we celebrate, we remember, every child matters, things like that. And we might bring in Indigenous music then. Perhaps if we're doing an international festival, we want to incorporate music in our classroom as well, to underline or to accentuate different cultures that are being shared or presented, or to highlight them. And of course, there's always having a choir or a singing group of some kind, or an instrumental group of some kind that uses music, whether it's a traditional group using traditional instruments, or it's a group in what we would consider a more westernized version of a choir or an orchestra or a band, things like that. But that's usually what we tend to do with music in the classroom. What are your ideas? How do you use music in the classroom?
Right, and we have some ideas. Yeah, we have some ideas in the chat. Patricia is saying to introduce or reinforce themes that Rachel was mentioning earlier on. And then Carolina says for listening activities, filling in the gaps in the lyrics. Vocabulary, listening, grammar-wise. Jennifer uses music as a background while learners are doing individual work. Right. That's soothing for many students, for open discussion about a certain topic. Manal, that's very interesting. So you start with a song and then the theme, you use the theme or what the song is sharing as a starting point. Interesting. According to Vincent, lyrics in a song is very useful in teaching grammar, such as the use of second or third conditional. If I Had $1 Million, sung by Berenice Ladies. Yes. I've used songs for conditionals.
I guess every teacher did.
Every teacher has done so, right? And Arita, echoing back to what Manal was saying, looking for socio-cultural messages, right? The theme and going back, and Rachel touched that too. Joshua, I have used Ronald Anton's contemporary music approach where I teach a grammar point, for example, used to, and then I give them an instrumental version of a song like Hotline Bling and have them write their own lyrics. Yes, that's very creative. Practice their songs and then perform it. Wow. That should be amazing. Wow, that's really fun.
Sounds fun.
Could you tell us more?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so any grammar points. So if you're going to do second conditional, you could do Bare Naked Ladies, and then just look up on YouTube, If I Had $1 Million instrumental. And then it's a good time to teach them about syllables. So, and then you can put them in groups. You can really stretch it out, have them form a band, have them do marketing for releasing the single.
Wow.
You can do a lot of fun things with that.
And your students love it, right?
They better. I hope so. I think
yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks, Joshua.
Thank you so much. Nancy is saying Gordon Lightfoot's Railroad Trilogy for a bit of Canadian history. Right? So there's so much information in a song that we can utilize and bring into our classroom in a fun way, right? Not the traditional way. Thank you so much. Anyone else would like to take the floor and share their own experiences? Group presentation using different songs. How do you organize that, Rita? We would love to learn more, if possible. You're free to unmute yourself if you want. We can't hear you. If you are muted, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think I can unmute faster than I can type. Although that was slow just 2 seconds ago. But yeah, I have used it in the past with a listening and speaking class. They were at a level 6-7, and it was where they would choose some songs. I could have some for them to choose from, or if they had a particular one that they wanted to do. And of course, they would be in their groups, usually about maybe groups of 4, or you could have 5, but I would say 4 is ideal. And they would look at the lyrics, of course, have a recording of the music. If they couldn't provide it, then I would help them with that. So it seems like a lot of work, but it's very collaborative, even including the teacher end of it. It may seem on the surface that it's teacher oriented, but it's not. It's one of the ways that you can really learn to facilitate as a teacher, because you're helping the groups. They take charge of what they want to do, which song, and you'd look at the lyrics, you'd listen to the music, and they could discuss what messages they get out of it. And they would probably come up with some questions that they could offer up for discussion at the end of their presentation of the music and the lyrics. And in that way, they could discuss certain things. It was a bit of an advanced group, like an advanced discussion of presentation part of the general course. That wasn't the only thing in the curriculum, but it was part of what I, always did with the students. And usually, you can end off the week. You could begin on a Wednesday giving the assignment, continue, and then have the final on a Friday. They would usually present, and then we'd all be listening to the music and trying to enjoy and hearing it again, listening to it again, see what we thought, or what we all thought, what each group thought about the different genres of music.
So listening,
it's
speaking.
used to engage them, and so that they can engage each other.
Right.
And think about what can we talk about regarding these pieces of music.
It's very interesting. Wow. That's lovely to hear. Thank you so much, Rita.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
I'm now thinking, what have I done similar to this? What can I do in the future? Thank you so much. This is lovely. Jennifer is saying they did music bingo with Special Olympic athletes in April 2022. Wow. We used Disney songs in Spotify. Isn't that amazing? Music bingo. Wow.
Nice.
I'm sure those students will not forget it, right?
Nope.
Rick Denhill, sometimes when we touch regarding romance relationships, yes. And so you pick a theme and there are so many songs, rhythms and limericks for pronunciation. Absolutely. According to Suzanne. And then Kim is saying songs are good to teach the connected speech and gist. There's so much about pronunciation, shortenings. There's so much of informal language usually, right, in a song, but that it all depends on the song you're picking and choosing, on the options you're giving. As Rita was saying, we give them some options, right, because we want to guide them somehow. They loved it, I'm sure, Jennifer, right? Program issues, digital bingo cards. Yes, Joshua, idioms, phrasal verbs. They can be found there. That's a wealth of knowledge that comes from songs. Great. This is lovely. Thank you, everybody. Gunul, I think we're ready for number 3.
Thank you, everybody, for participating. That's wonderful. And we are collecting a lot of great ideas to use in the future, right? That's excellent. So number 3, are there other ways we can use music in the classroom? So we'll start with Rachel again.
Yes, there are other ways that we can use music in the classroom, and we've actually touched on quite a few in the comments that people have shared about what they've done in the classroom. One of the biggest ways that we can use, and we're going to delve into that further later on, is using music to facilitate learning and to also enhance our learning environment. And that is a step away from using music as a textbook, or using music as you want to have like a choir or a band or something like that, or you're going to dissect the lyrics of a song. But it's now ways of enabling or taking music and using it as a learning tool to enable your students to learn more or retain more of what they've learned, or to enjoy the learning experience more than they have before.
That's great. Thank you so much, Rachel. That was wonderful. Now the floor is for the audience. Please feel free to unmute yourself, or if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, or if you have any comment, you can type it as well, like before. Feel free.
Right. Other ways we can use music. I mean, bingo. That was
That
interesting.
So can I jump
Rhythm
in here?
speech. Yes, please, Suzanne.
I use music, or at least rhythm of music, for pronunciation. And I write a lot of limericks. I write them from vocabulary lists. I write them from whatever my particular vocabulary focus is, or my sound focus. So if I'm focusing on certain sounds, certain vowel sounds, I will write a limerick with just those sounds.
Wow.
And I'm going to read one just because I pulled it up.
Please do. I would love to hear.
I'm focusing on the sounds ah, and ah, which for my student group are challenging sounds. So my aunt and my uncle have a daughter who loves to relax near the water. In the sun and the sand, my cousin gets tanned while I just get hotter and hotter.
That's awesome.
That was beautiful.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
Wow.
Get out your creative juices and write yourself a lyric.
Wow.
Limerick, sorry.
Well, they could become lyrics, right?
I'm actually, I don't want to, well, maybe someone wants to join me. I'm actually writing limericks for all 12 verb forms, verb tenses.
Wow. That's a great project. Yeah,
It's a very ambitious project.
Right.
So anyone, you can contact Suzanne. Yes.
Okay.
Great. Networking, collaboration. That's why we're here for. Thank you. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. That was beautiful. That was brilliant, Suzanne. Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, I love these sessions. Marcia is saying, I like to have music playing. Yes, we read this, right? Oh, did we? No, right? Music playing in the background when my literacy students are working on art and writing projects for inspiration purposes, relaxation. Beautiful. Yes. Did I miss anything? Anything else? We're good. Wow. Some creative teachers in here tonight. That's amazing. Well, that's why you came, because we had an artistic topic. Okay, good. So let's move on to conversation questions.
Okay, that was wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for participating and sharing your personal experience. And now we're going to start. We have a total of 5 conversation questions. So the first one is, what is the difference between learning facilitation and learning enhancement? So we'll start with Rachel again and the audiences.
So learning facilitation is making learning easier. And we do that already in our classroom by how we set up our classroom, where we place different pieces of furniture in the classroom if we're in an actual classroom. Virtually, it's a little bit more challenging to make learning easier because we can't go into our learners' homes and, fix things or, take things out or whatever. But we can, as much as we are able, even online, create an environment that facilitates or makes learning easier. And what do I mean by that? I mean by we always want our physical classroom, for example, to be well lighted, but not too bright. We want it to be comfortable, where students feel sort of like at home, but not too comfortable at home, because we don't want anybody to put their feet on tables and things like that. We don't want anybody to fall asleep either. But we can use music to help us with that. We can play soft music when our students come into the classroom, especially if we have students who have come from, who have fled from war-torn countries or have been made to leave their country of birth. They have a lot of stress, a lot of baggage. Some of them have a lot of bad memories, things they've seen or experienced. Some may be concerned or worried about family and so on. And then they also have their stresses of being here in Canada, juggling school and getting their kids to school and making sure their kids have their homework done and not really sure what it is that their kids' teachers are telling them to do or whatever. So they have this whole baggage, emotional baggage that sits on their shoulders and keeps them from learning, because when they come to the classroom and they're stressed, and we all know that when we go to work and we go through traffic jams and people honking at us and whatever, what happens when we get to work? We're all stressed and we can't focus, and we just need a moment to be somewhere quiet or whatever to just kind of unload all that stuff before we can now dive into our work day, whatever it looks like, whether we're teaching in person or online, or whether we're a team lead or overseeing or helping, whatever the role is. We need an opportunity to kind of decompress and to get rid of our stress. So music can do that. So you can create the environment virtually. You can play, there's lots, especially on YouTube, there are lots of videos that actually have nature scenery, and they're very peaceful, and they're different types of music. Some of them are more classical-y. Others tend to be more modern, more new agey kind of sound. Some are just animal sounds or nature sounds, but you can put those on to create an environment where when your students come in or log in online, they have an opportunity to kind of just quiet themselves and relax, so that they're in a mood where they can actually learn, where they can actually focus on what's going on. If it's your physical classroom, you can also play music softly in the background, and that will enable them to de-stress and be able to focus on learning. And that's only one way. And their music does so many things for the body. It can affect our heart rate, our blood pressure, our pulse rate. It can reduce muscle tension, improve body movement and coordination, affect our body temperature, increase our endorphin levels, regulate our stress-related hormones, boost immune system, and the list goes on. There's a very long list of things that how it impacts our physical health. So that would be learning facilitation, and part of that would be what's called a concert. So let's say you are doing a grammar lesson and you want to introduce your students to a new grammar point, maybe a verb tense or whatever. You can play music that is between 52 and 60 beats per minute, and dim the lights. And then you can read whatever it is that you want them to learn out loud to them. And because it's a relaxing environment, it enables them to actually understand it or absorb it a lot easier than if it were where you just said, okay, we're going to do a different activity, a group activity or small group activity, or here, this is a handout, read this, and then we'll discuss. And that, again, that's another way of using music to facilitate learning. Learning enhancement would be, as I had mentioned earlier, you were doing creative activity, or say the example we were given, you're writing a limerick. Well, it might be nice to have some Irish jig music in the background while you're writing your limerick, or maybe some, something like that. And it would help to get their juices flowing as they're trying to take these vocabulary words and put them together to create their own limericks. And then after whatever period of time, you could say, okay, does anybody have a limerick that they want to share? But you could also do the same thing for a group activity, whether they're talking with each other or they're just working together on a written project or whatever. But of course, if it's a written project, I would put, as I said before, I wouldn't put any music with lyrics, but something that's just instrumental, just to enable them to focus more on their writing task. So those are some examples of the differences between learning facilitation and learning enhancement using music.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. That was such a detailed explanation. Rita has her hand up.
Yes, just to enhance what Rachel was talking about in terms of the effects on the actual physical part of the students, their bodies, their mind. there is a series called the Mozart Effect. It's on CD, and it's called the Mozart Effect, Body, Mind, and Soul, or Spirit, if you will. And they have a series of different music for, on these 3 CDs that is specifically directed to those 3 areas: mind, body, and spirit. So I recall using it when, when I was working full time. I am retired now, by the way, but I still enjoy these classes. I always use them for varying, effects in the classroom, and just doing different things with them. So plus I do like music, and any kind. So I always was open to even using different music from different cultures. And sometimes you would get this jolt. Their faces would have such surprise. And, oh, how do you know that music? Well, I don't really know it, I'd say, but I appreciate it, and they would be amazed that it's music from their countries. So it was quite nice to see. And that would also facilitate, I had that little trick behind it. I wanted them to start talking about their music, not only, giving them an opportunity to look at this culture's music, the Western culture's music, or specifically Canadian, but I wanted them to be able to open up and talk about themselves, and what they liked and what it meant to them. So just wanted to add that.
That's awesome.
I just add something
So
really
beautiful. Yes, Joshua, please.
Yeah, just thank you for your comment, Rita. So I've done a deep dive and all this. So the Mozart Effect is really interesting. It was really popular in the 90s. And it was the idea that just if young people would listen to classical music, it would increase their academic results. It led to a lot of pseudoscience. It's actually been widely disproven. You can listen to heavy metal and get straight A's. But yeah, that being said, long live Mozart.
I like rap too. I like rap music too. So
Right.
it's okay.
Well, it's great for sampling.
Well, as Rita says, we have to adapt to what students we have, right?
Right.
Actually, why not?
To their preferences as well.
Right. Are we good?
Yes, that's great. Perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's move on to conversation question 2. How does music affect us, our minds, and our bodies? We kind of touched a little bit, but over to you again, Rachel, if you would like to add or explain a little bit more.
So we talked about how music can affect our breathing, our blood pressure, our heart rate, and we also talked about how it can affect or increase our endorphin levels. It can regulate our stress-related hormones, strengthen our memory and hearing. It can boost productivity. It also creates or generates a sense of safety and well-being. It can change our perceptions of space and time. And we know how that happens. We might be working on something and we put music on while we work on it. And the next thing you know, it's an hour later or an hour and a half to 2 hours later. And you're like, oh my, where'd the time go? I wasn't intending to be doing this for that long. But the music helps us to lose our sense of time, or our notions of the time is passing and more time perhaps than we wanted it to pass. It also strengthens our memory. Somebody had shared about using music as a mnemonic device. There are lots of songs that have been written to help students learn different verb tenses or learn vocabulary. And we know all of us learned A, B, C, D, E, F, G, which helps us to remember the alphabet. And there are other ways that we use music to help us with our memory. It can also stimulate or repress our digestion. heavy metal may be great to listen to when you're like in your car, but I'm not sure if you'd want to do that when you're eating your dinner. You might end up with some indigestion. It also helps us with endurance. If anybody has done an endurance event or sport, music helps us, probably because it helps us to not realize that time is passing, but it also distracts us and it enables us to go farther or run longer or bike longer or whatever. It also, as I said before, one of the biggest things or the biggest effects that we would probably find beneficial in the classroom is its ability to make us feel safe and to reduce our stress levels. And that in turn, that knowledge on how it affects us is useful for us, but it's especially beneficial for us as we are planning on using music in the classroom and how we use it in the classroom.
I love that point, Rachel, really thinking about our students and where they're coming from, but even about ourselves, right? So after these 2 years of being under stress and our students as well, juggling between their studies and their children homeschooled and us doing the same, it's really a great point to think about our mental health and really use music as an initial point for us to relax and then join this new space, that of learning, and welcome learning in this way. So yes, thinking about accessibility, thinking about giving equitable usage to our space, to all our students, that's really great. Jennifer is saying that music as medicine heals illness, lowers anxiety and depression. Dr. Emoto did studies in 1950s and photographed healthy cells going through bloodstream versus unhealthy cells moving in the body. I use a sacred harp invented by Carla Rose Kelly. It's scientifically proven now. Wow. It really helps change your mood, definitely, but then healing illnesses. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Jennifer. If you could share more, that would be amazing. Portia is saying, I've used soft music as a change of pace to relax and bring students back to task. Great tips. Thank you, everybody. Anyone would like to add how music affects us? Especially, I think, when we come from different cultures, music really puts us into that country, into those memories of places we've been to, right? At least whenever I listen to particular music that's from a specific country, it really makes me go back to those memories and it makes me feel different, right? So it changes my mood for sure. Jennifer has a question. Does music potentially distract some learners and contribute to them losing focus? Are there types to avoid for this?
I would say yes, and that's why I mention if you're using music as a background or an enhancer while your students are working on an activity, if you want them to really focus, then I would pick something that doesn't have any lyrics, just the music. And I would probably pick something that is not, how do I qualify this? Not too party music. For example, in my classroom, if my students are working on something and like if they're working on something that doesn't require them to write, like they're making a poster, for example, for an assignment or whatever, and they're just cutting and pasting, you know, like they've already written their text and they're just putting their images and whatever on their poster board or something like that, or they're working on their computer and putting together their Google slide or their PowerPoint or that kind of stuff, then I would put music on, and I'm not really worried too much about the tempo, just that it's not too upbeat, but like I might put samba music or salsa music, or I might put country music, but I would probably not pick something like, let's see here. Just thinking something at the top of my mind. Can't Stop the Feeling, like with Justin Timberlake. You know, because that makes you feel more like dancing, and you don't necessarily want them to get up and dancing because they have stuff that they need to do, but at the same time, do you want them to have fun while they're doing what they're doing? So I wouldn't put something like that on. But you could put a whole variety of music on that would help them to, you know, whatever. But if they were sitting working on an essay, then I would probably put something a lot softer. I would make the volume a lot softer, so it's just there but not really there. And it would be something more soothing and calming with less less percussion. Just to create an environment that, you know, relaxes, but also focusing. So no lyrics, no tempo that's really distracting or, you know, anything like that, just to enable them to really get into their assignment and really focus and get the job done, kind of thing. So I hope that answers your question. I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts, or if they have.
Well, Joshua does.
I'm sure he does.
Joshua has summarized.
I wrote my master's on this, so I just pulled this straight from my master's paper, because there's a part on songs to avoid.
Interesting.
Avoid.
Yeah.
So there's a list. There's a list of songs to avoid, right?
If you go to songstoavoid.com, no, I'm just kidding. But those ideas can work.
Songs to avoid.
Well, that explains, because I was like typing so much information. Okay, from your master's, that's very interesting. Thank you, Joshua, for sharing, and great tips for sure. And as Rachel was saying, the song lyrics should be easy, should not be buried. And we mentioned no heavy instrumentation whenever you're focusing their attention on vocabulary, pre-scanning our songs, making sure that there's no inappropriate language. That's great. The tempo, like Rachel, were you in Joshua's mind? So word order, vocabulary level. We mentioned all of this. You should get in touch and keep on exploring this avenue. Yeah, songs that have a lot of repetition provide better opportunities for retention. And I'm sure we've all heard from our students that they have learned that particular verb or word or noun or adjective because of the song and due to a particular song, and they love the song and they learned some of the words there. So repetition helped with retention and comprehension for sure. And I love the last tip, Joshua, that assessment should never be based on musical ability. We're not teaching music,
absolutely,
language, right? That's a great point. It should be based on the use of the target language, whether it be correct pronunciation, vocabulary, stress. Music is the tool that we use to enhance and help with language learning, but it can never be used as an assessment tool. Excellent. Great points. This is amazing. And then Rick is sharing songs to avoid and songs to include in our classes or singers. Thank you, everyone. Any other ideas about this question? I think we covered all our bases, right? Ganu, we can move on, and please feel free to
time to move
sharing.
On.
Yes.
Our third conversation question: how can we make better use of music to maximize the benefit to learners and teachers? Over to you, Rachel.
Well, we can put together everything that we know about how music affects both our minds, but our bodies and our spirits. And we can harness that information and use that to really make music a tool in our classroom. So it's great to use it for learning grammar or pulling it apart to learn about sociocultural expectations, or to compare sociocultural expectations between people living in Canada and people who live elsewhere and seeing what the differences are, what the similarities are, things like that. That's excellent. But we can also, as we said before, use music as the background when we're doing assignments, or using it as when we're welcoming students into our classroom to create an atmosphere. And again, that will depend on what we're doing in the classroom. One thing that we didn't actually talk about, but we could do also with music, especially, is to take usually they use in school, they talk about designated physical activity, which is basically a body break that you have in the classroom. And usually, most often it's used with elementary and high school students, but it actually is also important for adults. If you're sitting in a classroom for an hour and a half or 2 hours, you need a break. So tell your students, stop, put your pencils down. We're gonna do some salsa and put some salsa music on and let everybody go whatever, or put some country music on and do some line dancing, whatever. You don't have to do it for 15 or 20 minutes. It's not a dance class. The goal is just for them to get moving a little bit, and it helps the juices flowing, helps the blood to flow again. And then, if they were dozing off in the chair, then it helps to waken them up again so that you can now get back into the act of learning. So any of those things, plus all of the things that you have already shared, you have all been doing a lot of great things in your classrooms to help your students learn, and using music as the tool. But all of that together, being more aware of what music can do, and then making sure we use music actively for that. In the different ways that it can be used, that's the best way that we can maximize the benefits for our learners and for ourselves.
Great points. Thank you, Rachel. Absolutely. Yes. And Carolina is saying, have a list of songs that we can use. Have it ready, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we feel that we need to, it's time to use this song, especially when we have like long stretches, like classes that are run for a long time. That's a great tool to use for sure.
Or even at the end of a day, like I'm thinking if you had a night class and you have students who might have gone to work during the day and they're coming to class in the evening,
Mm-hmm.
their energy level is not the same.
Yes. Their concentration, their motivation. But if they know that they will have the treat of a song at the end, it will be fun. Mm-hmm. They'll look forward to it. Great. Any other ideas? We covered many of them for sure. Great for 5-6 link classes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, I have a grade 2 at home, and they use music a lot. So I'd say there are simple songs, even for 1, 2, or 2, 3. Yeah. Suzanne, yes.
So again, I'm coming kind of from the rhythm side of music, less from the tune, less from the lyrics. And I can get my drum out to prove it. Anyway,
Do please.
Your musical soul is coming out.
does anybody do readers theater? Does anyone engage in readers theater in the classroom? And this could be something that's done spontaneously in the moment, like with short prep, or it can be done over a longer period of time and lead more toward a presentation or performance. But the idea of enhancing pronunciation through theater and readers theater and the rhythm of English and the intonation and so on is very much music based in my view. So it's a great tool, and I think people enjoy it. Everybody from children to adults enjoy it. Gives them a moment to be, an actor and
Mm-hmm.
bring out their inner silly side possibly. And again, if you include, I've written my own reader theater scripts in some points, but there's lots of them available online. You can focus on the language or the theme or the story or whatever it is that you're working on in class. Anyway, it's my rhythm-based readers theater.
Wow.
Thanks, Susan.
Would love to learn more. So if you can share any documents or anything, that would be lovely. Thank you, Suzanne. I would love to be your student.
I was thinking the same.
Right? Being an actress.
Anytime.
Aaliyah is saying, what about music used as charades? Mhm.
Yes, that's a very good one. Or even as a play. You know, like I remember when I was in my high school, one of my high school English classes, our teacher told us to pick a piece of music, and then we had to make a play that goes along, or write a play that goes with the music. Okay. So my friends and I, we picked Pink Panther, the theme from Pink Panther. And we made a play. It's a charade, because there's no words. It was just the music, where we were robbers sneaking into a house to rob. And so, of course, you know, you have the lost my thought there. The sorry, not the tambourine, the
Drum?
no, cymbals. You have the cymbals at the beginning, and it's just, you just have the stick beating on it, just dun, and then you have dun, 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 and then of course we're moving, and then we're stopping when the music stops, and we're looking like it was really a lot of fun. But that would be an amazing way for the students to you know, get into drama, and then of course you could also have them play it as a game, and everybody else has to guess what exactly they're trying to act out or whatever. So that's an excellent suggestion. Yes, definitely use music as charades and readers theater, as was suggested as well.
That's great. Suzanne, you shared your link, right? The scripts, perfect. Thank you. You can find Suzanne's link there. Thank you so much. Great ideas. Jennifer shared using short clips of a song for music bingo, and then sharing fun facts. Every 5 songs, there's a fun fact related to the Disney song. And you can do that online. You can do that on Zoom. And of course, you can also do that face-to-face. That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for the amazing ideas. I have a list here that I'll try out as soon as I go back to teaching. Okay, great. Let's move on to our 4th question, Ganu. Thank you, everyone.
What are some ways we can use music to facilitate learning in our classes, whether online or in person? We'll start with Rachel again.
We've touched on some already, but basically we could play music in the background. We can use music. We could share a Spotify list or a playlist with our students, or you could create a playlist on YouTube, for example. There are lots of videos with songs on YouTube. Some have video or a picture as opposed to just a still of whatever. So it's actually a bit more interesting. But you can create those and share them with your students when they're at home, for example, or virtually, or a Spotify list, or create your own that students can use. Or you can even allow your students to share lists between them, create like a group where they can share their own lists that they can use. And you can assign specific pieces that they should listen to while they're doing certain assignments, or when they're reviewing, or when they're learning new material. Same thing in the classroom. And of course, we have all the other suggestions that people have also added about using music, for example, and doing a reader's theater, or using music as for charades, or using music to learn grammar or grammar points, or talking about social cultural things in the classroom. So either using it as source material, using it as in the background, or to enhance our students' learning, creating a stress-free environment for them to relax and be able to focus on learning, and being aware of how the music that we're using affects their body and their mind, and then making the best use of that.
So, right, sharing this information with our students, right? Because
Mhm.
maybe this is something they've never done before based
Mhm.
on where they're coming from. And they're like, I'm in a language classroom, not in a music classroom. And maybe, right, their reaction. So
Yes.
talking about this, the benefits
Yeah.
is very helpful. Thank you. Mhm,
Absolutely.
mhm. Great points. Good. Anything else that you haven't shared with us so far? Please do so. We've covered so much indeed. Yes, Stacy.
Yeah, I think something that we haven't talked about a lot yet is the idea that music, English is very musical. And I say that to students quite often, you know, like you can't be like staccato. And when you speak English, you have to make it like a song. So actually, when we tell a joke and everybody laughs, we're kind of making music together. We're all doing our own pitch and we're all like getting in on some groove with each other. So I think that making music, not like radio music, but just saying like any sound that we make together is joyful and is musical. And so like even clapping, you know, when someone does a presentation, when everybody does that together, it creates like this energy, right? That's good for everyone in the room. And so on Zoom, sometimes you don't want a whole bunch of loud clapping, but sometimes we do like the silent rub, you know, and you can still kind of hear it, right, when someone's rubbing. Or what else do we do? Sometimes I'll say, you know, let's all take a deep breath together, and whatever sound comes out is just fine, like whatever you want to express. Everybody does it together, and it's this like bonding thing where you know you use those sounds to create community together, and it's not exactly a lesson, but it does make people want to be there in your class and feel accepted, and all those kinds of things. We could also make a list of resources that we tell students to read extensively, but I think there's lots of other things that they could do to enhance their English that they don't do. And so this is a website, interplay.org, and it's sort of like it's like improv, you know, where somebody gets a role and you have to perform something, but it's online and a lot of the classes are free. And there's even one for international women, which I will put in the link there as well. And so you could just give those links out to students and say, you know, this is a great way to practice English, meet other people that you don't know, and just step out of your comfort zone. And, you know, everybody's there to support you. So why wouldn't you go for it? It's free and it's fun and it's you know, everything you're looking for.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing, Stacy. Wow, that's nice. Suzanne is also saying lyricstraining.com. But yes, Stacy, your points on making sound with whatever we can, it's really nice because it bonds our students and they feel at ease when they are in our classes for sure. So very interesting points. So Suzanne, lyricstraining.com.
Full of popular, current, and old songs, whatever you like, lots of genres, 4 levels, and your job is to listen and type in the missing words. And until you type in the missing word, you can't move forward in the process. So it's basically a listening exercise
and spelling
music. Yeah.
Listening and spelling exercise. That's
awesome.
That's awesome. Wow.
Very good.
Yes. Should have known this yesterday.
Well,
okay.
Sharing, I think I'm going to share Rachel's handout that has great information. If anybody interested, before the session's over, maybe it's a good idea to click on it and put it in your favorites so that you have access to it. And we're gonna continue with the last question. And then we'll do the breakout room activity. So what about copyright laws, fair use, and public performance license? Again, you, Rachel.
Very important considerations, especially if we are online, or if, let's say, you were recording a lesson that you're going to share with your students that includes music, to be aware of, one, how much of the music are you using? If you're asking your students, for example, to work with the lyrics, there are so many websites that offer lyrics from different songs that you can just share the link or the URL for the particular site you're looking for with the song that you want. If you're looking at it as to study like grammar or to break the song apart, to talk about the sociocultural, etc. But we do have to always be aware of when we are using or sharing somebody else's copyrighted material. Fair use gives us permission to use a small portion of the work, whether it's some bits and pieces of the words or a portion of the actual music. But if you are re-recording, like I said, if you are making a video for a lesson that you'll eventually post or share with your students, like in your Google Classroom or some other place where your students can then view the lesson at their own pace and time, then I would avoid using material, the actual music in your lesson, unless your school or school board or whatever organization you're working for has a public performance license that includes recording and streaming. Then you don't have to worry about anything. Because even though we use things for educational purposes, it doesn't mean that we can copy everything. We still have to respect copyright laws and so on. And oftentimes we get a little bit carried away in the educational sector because we feel that because it's for educational purposes and we're not going to be reselling anything or making any dollars off of it, that it's okay. But we still need to be careful about how we're using what we're using, what portion of what we're using, then you have to be careful. And again, go back to what your particular organization's rules are, what they have available as licensing, to make sure that you fall within the guidelines, which may also include keeping a log of any copyrighted material that you are sharing, like in the recordings or things like that. Because that goes back to royalties and things like that. So you have to be careful about
making money.
What you're using that way.
Right. Thank you. Those are valid points. Always check with your institution and make sure that whatever you're using is allowed. Great. Thank you. Okay. So if you don't have anything else to share, so yes, Rick, we would still advise you to check with your institution and organization and have their okay for you to use.
The whole idea of copyright law is just to protect the artist from other people who will use their material to make money from it. It's about the money. So as long as you're not making money doing it, it's fine. You know, I don't think Paul McCartney would be upset if I play some of his music in the classroom. He would probably, you know, shake my hand and probably give me a big hug because I'm helping his name to stay alive. I'm actually doing him a favor. As long as I'm not making money at it, it's perfectly fine. We don't need to get paranoid about copyright laws. That's my point.
Well, some of us might be also working in an organization that have students who pay a tuition, so that can be interpreted as making money, though we're not. So always be aware. Absolutely, I fully understand your point, Rick, but we highly advise that people are aware. Okay, so now it's time for us to move on to a breakout room activity. Ganul will share a question, and then you will be split into breakout rooms where you could engage into discussing this question, giving your own answers, and then we'll come back.
Yes, just while you're in the breakout room, make sure that which group you're in, like group 1, group 2, or 3, and also choose someone who can report what happened in that group, because we'll be here and we'll be wondering what happened there. So we'd like to know when you come back. And if anybody else in the group would like to participate, that's also fine, but we need definitely one reporter for sure.
Great, so rooms are open and
so
feel free to
Let
join.
me read out loud the question. Probably you already did, but based on what we have discussed, how will you use music in your ESL classroom? Please share some examples, whatever you will be discussing in the breakout rooms. Enjoy that time frame while Loretta is preparing the rooms. We'll see you soon.
The rooms are ready. See you soon.
Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back. I know you needed more time. It's lovely to see more cameras on. That's the magic of breakout rooms.
We're just getting warm up.
Yeah, I know.
We were talking about that.
We just finished the preamble.
We knew the time is not enough.
Yeah, we
But
know.
we had to do it. Sorry.
We have only 90 minutes.
Right.
Too
So,
bad.
yeah. Should we make it 2 hours? You can give that suggestion in our
If we include a
survey.
break.
I'm okay with that.
Right? We should include a
Yeah,
break,
Yeah,
right?
a dance break.
Music break.
A music break.
Salsa,
Body
salsa.
break.
Music break will do.
That's amazing. Great. So
Awesome.
let's start with reporting what you were discussing so actively in your room. So room one, we had Nancy, Patricia, Portia, Rick, and Rita. Anyone would like to share? Is the speaker from group one, from room one? Anyone?
I can share.
Thank you, Nancy.
So we said, what if the students don't want music, don't like music? We're teaching adults, but then it came out that we're not all teaching adults. So using a diplomatic approach and something that I was going to comment along with that is that when you explain why you're doing something, the students legitimize it a lot better, you know, and even those students that don't like music, you know, they'll understand why you're incorporating it into the classroom. So this is mostly what we talked about is, you know, if students like it or don't. Rick, did you want to add something to that?
I'm glad you're very diplomatic, I
Thanks,
must say. She
Thanks,
didn't talk about
Nancy.
the showdown that I had with one of the other teachers. Thank you for not mentioning that.
That's for the private group thing. So
Right. Yeah.
keeping it that way.
Diplomacy at its best. Great. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, room one. We can move on to room two. We had Mary, Stacy, and Vincent. Anything?
So yes, we talked about what we did in the past and what we would like to do in the future. So in the past, some teachers used grammar lessons with music. Many teachers used music as background audio. And in the future, some people are going to try using music as background. And also we talked about looking on Tutela to see if there's any lessons already done where the lesson involves music, because then it kind of helps you to get an idea of how you could write music into your own lessons. And we talked about that using music at the beginning of class as a transition would be quite helpful to get students to realize that when the music turns off, oh, now class is starting. It's kind of like the bell, you know, back in elementary school, when the bell goes, everybody knows how it goes, right? When I was taking my kids to homeschooling classes, music classes, the teacher had a picture of a crocodile, and she showed the crocodile's mouth, and she said, when I make this sound, this sign, that is the crocodile closing its mouth. And so you need to close your mouth like the crocodile, the cut off crocodile. We're cutting it off. So that
I like that.
Yeah, maybe you can come up with something like that. The music cuts off. Your mouth cut off too. Yeah. Okay. And then we talked about maybe making a class list where everybody contributes a song to the class list, that the teacher would sort of have to pre-vet what those songs were before they were played out loud in the class. But then, you know, everybody gets their chance to have their say and bring in whatever song they would like to listen to. It's not going to kill anybody else to listen to somebody else's music for 3 minutes. So that was sort of our idea for a class song list as a project.
Great ideas. Absolutely. Yes. And you're giving everybody a chance to contribute. So equity for sure there. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. And room two. Thank you, everybody. So let's move on to room three. We had Aliyah, Jennifer, Joshua, Melita, and Yanika. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing any of your names.
Joshua, do you want to take this?
I've been talking so much. Do you want to go?
No, you do it. I like to listen to you.
What a group.
What did we talk about? We just talked about different experiences that our teachers have had. I think Alia was saying that he was explaining, or Alia was explaining their experience at their school. And in general, I think we were just saying that the people found it interesting that there's some songs to consider that maybe you shouldn't use for various reasons. And yeah, I think it just got the wheels spinning for everyone. And if anyone wants to add anything, by all means.
Oh, that's great. That's basically it, eh, Joshua? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joshua, Melita. Thank you to everyone in room 3. And the 4th room, we had Helen, Lee, Yu Kim, Nancy, Paul, and Reza. Anyone from your group?
So yeah, my group has asked me to report on our discussion. And basically, it was a little bit about past experience with using music in the classroom. And in my situation, a lot of times it was a very improvisational lesson, such as I had some music playing on YouTube clips when the students entered my classroom. And the first student who entered the class was a lady from Ukraine who was very familiar with the opera that I was playing on YouTube. And she and I started singing along together, and it made her feel very relaxed and comfortable. And as the other students came into the classroom, they would say, "What's going on, teacher? Concert?" So I said, "Yes. What kind of music do you like?" And so I had a Muslim student who said, "Beethoven." So we played some Beethoven, and then we played some Afghani pop music. And then my favorite story of this was my Vietnamese student. She's a very tiny 40-year-old, sparkling, shy, but very eager student. And I asked her, "What kind of music do you like?" And she looked at me and she said, "Teacher, I like Lobo." And I was very surprised by this answer because, and I see a lot of people here don't know who Lobo is. Lobo is a pop group from the 1970s.
Wow.
Pop rock group like ABBA, Trooper, Foreigner, that kind of music. But she was familiar with this music. And I was very surprised that, growing up in Vietnam, she would listen to, I guess, to Western music, Western culture. What I found is that music would bring the students together as long as everybody felt included, that we would represent the different cultures when I was playing. So I can play Chinese music, I can play Arabic music, I can play African music, something that makes all the students feel, "Oh yeah, I know that, that's from my country." And it's something that now listening to the discussions tonight, how can I do that a little bit more? How can I use that feeling of inclusiveness in the music? Use that to teach about idioms, use that to teach about different cultures, use that in so many ways, keep them drawn in together. It's like teaching in a classroom where you're serving food. Everybody loves food. Everybody loves music. Share that and you keep everybody included.
Great messages. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nancy, and room 4. Wow, I'm speechless tonight. Okay, and let's move on to room 5. We have Manal, Paul, Sean, Suzanne, and Sylvester. Who's the reporter from your group?
I took some notes. So if nobody else wants, so there was a discussion around using music as background music, which particularly called up feelings, in some cases, deep emotional, sometimes sad feelings. There, in the same vein, background music to relax people. There was the idea of teaching vocabulary with a gap fill exercise, possibly using Disney music. There was the idea of music, a website called Music Play that one of our members used for, clapping and rhythm and performance, and then as a springboard to letting them be creative and maybe introduce choreography and so on. That was very successful for him. And then another gap filled with lyrics building up over the course of a week from a particular song.
Great, amazing ideas. Thank you so much, Suzanne. And room 5. This was great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Ganul?
If you would like to, keep in touch with Rachel, if you have any question or concern that we couldn't really, take it up and you still have concern, please reach out to her. She'll be more than happy to answer your question if you have any. And then we have closing. Over to you, Loretta.
Thank you. Once you stop sharing, I could share the closing slides. Great, thank you, everyone. So PD certificates will be emailed to you using the email address that you used to register for this event. It will take up to 7 days. There will be a survey that will also be emailed to you within a few business days. And then don't forget our upcoming TESL webinars on Wednesday, May 18th from 7 to 8 p.m. You can attend our Understanding Gender and Sexual Diversity from Celeste Turner. We had Celeste present in one of our TESL dialogues, so please join her in her webinar. And then on Sunday, May 29th from 3 to 4 p.m., 3 to 4, you have Assessment for Learning, The Road to Improvement by Ani Altamirano. Thank you, everyone. This was amazing. We learned so much from all of you, and we would like to thank all of you for being so actively present today and from sharing so many of your brilliant experiences. Thank you, everybody, and see you in our next TESL Dialogue.
Thank you, everybody. Have
a
great one.
Good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Okay, thank you.